We're gonna have a roll call. Beatty?
Here.
Como?
Here.
Mr. Rutledge?
Here.
Herschel? Here. Ms. Hand?
Here.
And I'm here. Okay. This special council meeting was called in regard to, let's go ahead and say our pledge of allegiance to our flag. Attention, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You'll remain standing for just a moment, please. Dear Lord, we ask you to be with each and every one that has come to our meeting tonight. Lord, we ask you to help us to make the best decisions for the city of Argo. Lord, we ask you to be with our all of our employees, whether it be the police, the fire, clerks, whatever we have. Lord, we ask you to be with each and every one of them. We ask you to be with our council, the present council and the incoming council. Lord, we ask you to be with them and help all of us make the correct decisions. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
This special call meeting was called to discuss this grant, FEMA grant, and I believe Mike has got Mr. Culpepper here to relay some of what we need to know about this so we can make a decision. And I believe basically what we're here for is to find out whether this council wants to go ahead and proceed and basically hire a grant writer. And, you know, Mr. Culpepper, with that, Mike, would you like to introduce him or got anything to say?
Well, first of all, me and Andy were going to attempt to work on this grant, and as we got into it, we're really beyond our capabilities of what we have to work with and the knowledge of this particular style type of grant. We've had a good success in grants in other areas, but not in this particular kind. In the time frame we had to do it and complete it, we don't feel like we'll be able to put together a grant that would make it through the review process. With that being said, that's why we've moved forward to try to get somebody that knows what they're doing to do this. We talked to EMA and several other places to find out who's recommended for this, and that's how we were coming into contact with Mr. Culpepper. Bottom line is, if we want the grant, I highly advise we go through what we need to do with this gentleman here. He can tell you a whole lot more about the grant than I can, so I'm going to go ahead and let him take over and explain a lot more details. We already went around the parking lot and looked at some areas around the lots to see where we could put it and things like that, and he'll further discuss that as well. So, Mr. Eddie Cole.
Thank you, Mr.
Well, I need this for him. Well, thank y'all so much for allowing me to come speak to you tonight. It's an honor to get to speak to you about something that I'm really passionate about. My company, Encompass 360, has been in existence since 1999, 2000 time. Right along those timelines is when the FEMA started their hazard mitigation program. I happened to be up in Washington, D.C. when I became aware of this. I was there when 9/11 happened, working on another project, and FEMA got in touch with me and we started talking and everything. There wasn't anybody in the Southeast that really understood the program. So I went through a lot of the training that they had and became more familiar with it. Well, it wasn't long after I finished the project up in Washington, D.C., Hurricane Ida hit along the Gulf Coast. And it did a lot of devastation in the Mobile and Baldwin County area and over in the Florida Panhandle. So I was pretty active in working on a lot of the different public assistance initiatives that were going on down there. And then I had an opportunity to get involved in the hazard mitigation part of it. I don't know how familiar you are with how FEMA does things, but there's a component called public assistance. And so when you have a disaster, PA, as they call it, or public assistance, is the money they use to help you get back on your feet. In other words, that's the federal money that's used to prop up municipalities and county governments and state governments and such. This hazard mitigation program is a spin-off of that. PA is intended to make you back whole like you were before the event happened. Hazard mitigation is intended to make you better for future events. And so what they did is they took a percentage of the amount of money they spent in public assistance and they created this HMGP pot of money. So, for example, when Hurricane Ivan hit, I don't remember how many billions of dollars of disaster was there, but there was a huge chunk of hazard mitigation money that got created out of that pot. And so, if you look in this little folder thing that I gave you, you can see, flip down to where it has that Baldwin County Coliseum. Out of the Hurricane Ivan hazard mitigation pot, the Baldwin County Coliseum got funded. And what this structure was intended to be was a hurricane shelter. And a hurricane shelter is completely different from a tornado shelter. Hurricane shelters are intended to house people for a long period of time, where a tornado shelter is intended to just take care of people for a short period of time. So this particular structure, as you see, is very large. It holds quite a bit of people. I think it's rated for 5,000. And it'll withstand a Cat 5 hurricane. It'll also withstand tornadoes too, but it was primarily built as a hurricane safe one. Pretty good sized chunk of change, as you can see there. It ended up being about a $10 million project, and of course FEMA contributes 75% toward the project, and the entity, be it a county, a city, or whatever, comes up with the 25% match. Not long after Hurricane Ivan hit, Hurricane Dennis hit, and it was primarily a flooding event. Not a whole lot of wind out of it, but it created more mitigation money. And so there were some other projects that got built out of the Hurricane Dennis pot. And then if you'll flip over, you'll see the ARC of Baldwin County there. That's a special needs shelter. The problem is when you got a general population in an area for an extended period of time, sometimes that doesn't work well for special needs. So we needed to create a special needs shelter for folks that needed, special care. And so this ARC of Baldwin County facility got built out of Hurricane Katrina money. And these are all pretty large projects, pretty substantial funding to create those. Not long, let's see, that was 2005 is when Hurricane Katrina hit. It was 2011, we had all the tornadoes hit up in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham and the surrounding areas, just a huge outbreak of tornadoes. It seemed like they were back to back to back. And that created a ton of mitigation money. And if you'll flip back toward closer to the front part of this flyer, the University of Alabama contracted with us to build a storm shelter on the campus of the University of Alabama. This particular one is on the east campus side, and this is one of several that they plan on building. This one got funded out of the tornadoes that happened in 2011, and as you can see, it's a pretty good sized facility, and it's up, if you're familiar with University campus, it's over by the rec center, behind nursing and Capstone Village, back over in that Then Tuscaloosa City Schools and Tuscaloosa County Schools had two facilities that got hit during the tornado. And so the city school system got funding for this University Place safe room that you see on the next page. And then Tuscaloosa County School System also got funding to do one at Holt Elementary. I show you these just to show you we've been involved with large projects and small projects and all the ones in between. Most of the ones that we've been involved with are full-blown construction projects, where you're having to go out and get structural engineers and architects and the whole 9 yards, to do a design on the building, and then the process of going through the bid process to get a general contractor involved, and then the actual build-out of something like this. These are major projects that require a tremendous amount of resources to make sure they're done properly. Then, if you'll flip over a little bit further, and I threw this one in. This is the City of Warrior recently received funding for a tornado safe room. And this is what I would call on the lower end of the funding totem pole, if you want to call it that. This one right here was roughly a $100K project. It is a metal safe room. I don't know if you've seen these Quonset hut style metal safe rooms. They're kind of they look like the old barracks that they used to have back in the Army. They're made out of metal. They're rated to withstand a tornado. There's nothing wrong with these shelters as far as safety. They will withstand a F5.8, and I think it was up in I can't think of the name of that little town up in the north west part of the state, but a bunch of them went into a facility similar to this right here when one of the tornadoes hit up there, and the mayor and the council and the fire department and police department were all in there, and they said if they hadn't been in there, they'd have lost their lives. So this thing's safe. The only thing that I would tell you about one of these that is an issue, I guess you might say, but maintenance on them is high. And the reason they're high is because they're metal. And it's almost like having a car. You're having to wash it down all the time. And the inside of it is, because it's metal, if it gets hot, cold, that creates sweat. And you got to have a dehumidifier in there, and some people put air conditioners in there. You're constantly trying to keep the thing from mold and mildew. And you just can't leave it sitting there and one day go in and say, gosh, let's use it, because it'll be in a mess, it'll be in a situation that you can't really put anybody in. I think the city of Trussville has the same problem. They got two over there, and I don't know all the details of it and everything, but they got some issues as it relates to these metal safe rooms. You just got to stay on top of it. It's the only thing I can tell you. And the other thing that you need to be aware of is this is only for a tornado safe room. So you basically spend about $100,000, and it's just sitting there until the next tornado comes. It don't really have a dual use purpose. The thing that's come out recently that we're excited about, and we've got 8 of them that have been approved by FEMA, is a concrete safe room, modular concrete safe room. And I think, do y'all have pictures? I think it was.
We just passed them out.
Yeah. This modular concrete is more like a dual use type facility. So you could use it for classroom training or meeting room or whatever you want to use it for. But it's not just sitting there waiting on the next tornado to come along. You're able to use it for something else, which is really what you want to do, is you want to get the most bang for your buck. It's a little bit more expensive than these metal ones. When I say little, it's really double what these metal ones are, but you get much more benefit out of it. You can, basically FEMA's going to pay for the concrete structure, having it set up and installed, get 2 ADA compliant restrooms, proper ventilation, backup power, generator, whatever. Anything that's required for life safety, they're going to pay for it. But if you want to go put brick on the side of it like one of these structures shows, that, okay. This building on the bottom right here is that same building, but they decided to go put brick on the side of it to make it, dress it up. They also added a pitched roof on it and everything, you know, to give it more of a aesthetic look. That roof is just a breakaway in a tornado. Underneath that roof is it's that concrete box right there. They just added that roof line on there to give it an aesthetic look. FEMA won't pay for that. Would be on your dime if you want to do something like that to it. If you flip over to the next page, you can see what the restrooms look like. And because this is a 100-person safe room, they're requiring you got to have two ADA compliant restrooms. So that comes standard with this. And of course, you got to have the necessary fire extinguisher. You got to meet local code as well as FEMA code. So that's all part of what gets spec'd out in these things. These are brought in on a low boy tractor trailer type rig, and they bring in one of these huge cranes and they off lift it and set it wherever it's going to go. That's the same for these metal ones as well. Most of the time, they build a concrete pad, but you can go with what's called a helical pier type system. And a helical pier, just think of it like as a pier where you run those piers down in the water and everything. In this case, you're running helical piers down into the ground, and they're stress, they put a stress test on them to make sure they're not going to pull up out of the ground. And they're bolted down with concrete the whole 9 yards. And then this building is connected to it. They put that kind of system in foundation-wise where you got landed, where you may have problems when you land. They'll go with a pier system. And you can see, in this particular case, they put in these benches for people to sit on. I personally wouldn't do that. I'd leave it empty. And y'all put whatever you want in there for meeting rooms and stuff like that. The only thing I have to tell you is chairs or tables and stuff like that can't be a permanent fixture like this right here. It's got to be a breakdown type system where you can put your tables and chairs on like one of these roller carts and put it back in a closet. But it's much more flexible for use. Thank you. So anyway, I was trying to think. You can read our overview of the company and everything. Like I said, we've been in business since 2000 roughly. We've had over $40 million worth of projects that we've helped counties, municipalities, school systems get in the past. We take the project all the way from grant process through the build process, construction, build out, close out. So we'll be with you from start to finish. Just trying to think what else there. Y'all have any questions?
What do you recommend for us? I mean, we're starting out. What would you recommend? I mean, we've all been basically looking at the little Quonset hut ones, because that's what we see. What, 100 occupant building like this one, you said roughly 200,000?
Yes, sir.
How many does the Quonset hut hold?
It's roughly the same amount.
I think it said 54.
Well, it depends on the size of it.
Okay.
How scared you are?
You can get these things smaller than that, okay? They're smaller than that, and even those metal ones, Quonset hut, you can get small. You just got to decide how many people you're going to try to protect. And I'll give you this example. There's a little town up in Coleman County, called Garden City. It's out in the middle of nowhere, and if you went flying through there, you wasn't looking real hard, you'd miss it. They got 5 of these Quonset huts side by side. And they got a connector that runs from one to the next, to the next, to the next. So you can go from the first one to the second one, to the 5th. I was talking to the mayor and the city clerk up there not too long ago. I asked her, I said, you got 5 of these things? And she said, yeah. And I said, do you have the population, to come stay at this thing? And she said, when those last tornado warnings and all went out, she said they had people, it was overflow. She said she didn't know where all them people came from, but it was packed for 5 of them.
Yeah, they just about Tornado Alley, I think.
Yeah. So once people realize you got something like that, and especially if they're in a mobile home or a structure they don't feel real comfortable with, they're going to be on your doorstep wanting in.
Let me ask you this, as far as, say we went with we wanted to put in for this concrete one, 100 occupant. To do the grant application, is it a flat rate with your company, or is it depend on the more we spend, the more your rate is, or
Well,
for the application? 'Cause I know there's some engineering and all that goes with it too.
what we're faced with is I have to get a structural engineer involved along, with the architect. And I have to have them certify what we're proposing to do. So whether I did it or you did it or anybody else, you gotta spend some money to get those certifications and all. If you decide to use part of your property as in-kind contribution to help you on your 25%, then you're probably looking at getting an appraiser involved to appraise the property. Some municipalities have the ability to do site work, utilities, and so on and so forth. Whatever the value of that is, and what we typically do is we'll get with a contractor or a construction company or whatnot and get a number. And that'll be our support for throwing that into the grant and saying, for example, the city of Argo is wanting to do some in-kind services. And they have the ability to prepare the site, and have the ability to do the electric, the gas, and sewer and whatnot. Whatever those dollar values are, we can put that over on the 25% side of it, and that's, like helps you with that piece of pie. But we have to have supporting documentation. I just can't go and say, well, I think that tract of land out there is worth $10,000. Somebody that's got like an appraiser has to do that. We got to get with a plumber or electrician or whoever, you know, get numbers to support if you want to do that other one. These projects, like your fire chief was saying, is not your typical grant project. It's there's a lot of work involved in it, and a lot of pieces to the pie. And what happens is, after this thing gets submitted, they're going to be coming back, they being FEMA, when the reviewer starts looking at it, he's going to be asking, well, what about this, and what about that, or change this, or change that. So there's this back and forth going on to get it to the point where he says, okay, you're approved, you can go. And so we handle all that back and forth with whoever we have to get with. But to answer your question on the cost, on a small safe room, whether it's metal or concrete or whatever, we've figured out that our typical cost on something like that is around $8,000. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep it low as we can so that you're not putting out a lot of money up front, and at the same time, you know, we're making sure that we cover those upfront costs that we got.
What about as far as we apply for this one? We say we go gung-ho after one now, we apply for it and we fail, and we want to go next round, we want to go in it too. Are we able, you know, the $8,000 that we spend, is that something we can basically reapply because we've got a lot of
Yes.
groundwork done?
Yes, you're not having to, there may be a few little things that we gotta change to make it, in other words, each one of these grants are tied to a disaster number, okay? And the application is tracked by these disaster numbers. So let's say we have another storm and there's mitigation money made available, and they say, okay, we want to fund this one out of that other pot. All we'll do is go back into the app and change it to reflect the other disaster numbers.
Yeah, I believe this one's 4251.
Exactly. But it shouldn't, the only thing that you're going to run into is if, let's say we go in and this is key, it doesn't matter who does this. Everything revolves around the site. If you tell them it's going right here, there's a lat long tied to that point. And everything on this project revolves around that lat long. The population that you're protecting, the whether or not, you know, it's being put on an Indian burial ground or in a, you know, just everything revolves around that lat long. If you come back a year later and say, well, we don't want to put it right there, let's put it over here, then you got to go, you can take pieces of it, but you got to go back through the process again to get it reapproved because you physically moved it from this point right here to this point right here. Now what we do is we do a primary location and an alternate. And we have that alternate in there in case something pops up, you know, we need to move it to that location. And they'll approve it based on them two locations. But if, you know, a year later, and I've had this happen, in fact, this, that University of Alabama safe room, it was originally physically behind Capstone Village. And one of the vice presidents down there decided, now we want to move it, you know, 2 buildings down behind this other one. We had to go back and get it reapproved for the new location.
If this council wants to do this and proceed, what would we need to do as far as to get you started? I know time is short. Yes, time is short now. Would you have time to put together a good application in it? 14th is the due date.
Yeah. The benefit of going with us is we've already done a lot of this. And so I've got some of this work already done. The specifics of the site are the things that I got to focus in on, like if I've got to go get an appraisal, or if I got to get different things specific to the site. We got to get a, I have a GIS group, and what they'll do is where we say it's going to go, they'll go out a half-mile radius from that location, and they pull in the demographic information for that, and they produce the reports and the maps and such. That's another cost that you're faced with. So all that I got to get going, you know, and running it in parallel. But like some of the specifications and things like that, you know, I've got some of that for this type of structures, whether you go metal or concrete. I will have to get an architect and engineer to take that and certify it for you. And, but it's one of those things where if you wait too long, it does become an issue of it's logistically just not feasible to pull off.
What's the feelings of the council? I mean, do y'all want to proceed with something in regard to this? Do y'all want to proceed, not proceed with the small one, the next side one, what?
You said this one would hold the smallest one would hold like 100 people. What would the next size up from that hold?
They usually go like 50, 100, 150, 200, 300,
What
like
is
that.
the comparison of the price of the 100 to the 150 people? What would be the difference in the price?
On the metal one, it's going to drop from 100,000 to roughly down to about 75,000. To go from 100 person back down to a 50.
She's gonna go the other way.
No, I want to go the other way.
Oh, you want to go higher? You want to go up higher? I thought you wanted to go back. You can figure somewhere in the neighborhood of 50.
The concrete
The
was.
concrete one, Mr. Culpepper.
Oh, you want me to focus on concrete? Okay. On the concrete one, to go up to a, what, a 200?
150 and 200.
150, 200?
Just go ahead and say 200, but I think I think it's broken out here, 100, 300, and such as that, so.
Well, there's actually one in between that
Is it?
100 and that 300 there. But for every 50 people, you're adding about a $50,000, $25,000 to $50,000, you know, to the size of it.
The restroom thing, as you're adding people, are you adding restrooms too, or?
If you'll look at this, it's 2 for 100 people or 2 for 300.
Oh, yeah.
Same number.
Once it gets up to, I think it's somewhere around 500 people, they're making you add more restrooms.
Have you found